There are big changes when it comes to feeding your infants, or new guidelines that have been issued urging parents to give babies what's called high-risk foods early on to prevent food allergies later on. We're going to sort this whole thing out, and we're following Dr. J.J. Levenstein, who's here to lead the charge in this. Let's talk about some of the big changes.
Sure. I guess the biggest change is that parents are not going to be discouraged from offering milk products, eggs, peanuts, fish before the first birthday, as was previously recommended. Well, and that's pretty radical.
Yeah, that's
radical.
I'm a little taken aback by that.
Yeah, because it's like if your child does have an allergy to peanuts, which seems to be prevalent nowadays, I mean, aren't you going to hurt your child? I mean, how do you find out without putting your child at risk?
Okay, so what has happened, I'm going to backpedal just a little bit so that we can understand this. Prior to the current guidelines in the year 2000, the American Academy of Pediatrics actually recommended waiting until a year to give kids milk products, until 2 to give them eggs and fish, and until 3 to give them peanuts. And that being said, the theory was that it would help delay the onset of allergies, when in fact the absolute opposite happened. So over the next decade, there was a skyrocketing of food allergy rates in children, and it really prompted scientists to really look at this recommendation and get some evidence for why. And one of the biggest clues was a study that was done of Israeli children, comparing them with Israeli children in England. So Israeli children in Israel eat a little food called bamba. It's a weaning food, and it's like a little melt-away cookie that they get at 4 or 5 months of age. It's loaded with peanuts, and there's virtually no peanut allergies in Israeli children living in Israel. But that same gene pool, those same Israeli children who lived in England, who delayed the onset of peanuts, had similar allergy rates to the United States. So that prompted a real critical look at the research.
So what is happening in that period of time that if we're giving these sort of high-risk foods early on, is the body processing it differently than if we wait after?
Yes, in a word, yes. And the word is called tolerance. Now, our bodies, our immune system, have the ability to view anything that we put inside of it as either friend or enemy. And it appears that with a lot of studies now, it's been shown that delaying does not benefit children. And actually, by giving some of these high-risk foods under a year, we get into that window of tolerance where our intestinal system and the immune system work together, look at it as friend rather than enemy.
It makes so much sense.
It does. And if we wait too long, which is probably what has happened over the last decade or so, then the window is closed, and potential allergens then have the potential to cause food allergy in children and also some other states of allergy.
Well, are there some children, though, that are more at risk than others?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, if you have a first-degree relative, typically a parent or a sibling, who has asthma, who has hay fever, who has food allergies or eczema, which is also called atopic dermatitis, those are certainly children that we consider at higher risk for developing any allergic manifestations, including food allergies. In addition, if a sibling has a peanut allergy, then your baby has a 7 times greater possibility of developing peanut allergy as well. So those are called high-risk children.
But that's after the first year? Or is that within?
That's at the time of birth, when you really look at the family tree and you look at, you know, who's wheezing, who's sneezing, who's itching, who's rubbing their nose, including you. So your sons might be in that category of possible risk. It doesn't mean it's 100%.
So if there is somebody who has a peanut allergy, say in the family, do we still want to introduce that high-risk food before the first year?
Yes, you do.
And then I would live in fear at that point.
I would too. You go into anaphylactic shock, you know. So, do you have an EpiPen available before you do it?
It's really, peanuts are one of the few allergens that can cause an allergic reaction on the first exposure. But that allergic reaction on the first exposure is not fatal. It's the second or third one. But that being said, if there's a family loaded with peanut allergies, for example, you probably want to have that first food challenge in the doctor's office or in the allergist's office, where the appropriate staff are there and equipped in case there is a reaction. But the good news is peanut allergies are only 0.6 to 0.8% of the population. And recent polls of Americans with school children estimated that peanut allergy was 24% of our nation's children, and it's only 0.6 to 0.8%.
The schools have you living in fear, like you can't send your kids to school with a peanut butter sandwich anymore. They just absolutely forbid it.
And we call it peanut panic. And these food bans don't work because, quite honestly, many parents sneak in peanut products with their children. Often teachers and staff at the school will also have peanut products around, and schools operate under a false sense of security with a peanut ban, and in fact, a lot of times that backfires, and some of the catastrophes happen in schools that are ill-equipped.
Why not? Why are these new guidelines issued? Why not just keep them the way they are? I mean, what's the goal here, to try to diminish?
To try to diminish food allergies in this country, because if you truly have food allergy, it means your immune system makes, I call it an enemy protein called IgE, so it's a good way to remember it, IgE for enemy. If IgE is released and you are going to develop a food allergy, a whole sort of time bomb, a cascade, a chain reaction of things can happen where it's life-threatening. So for some children and for some adults, food allergies are life-threatening. And a few times every year, we hear in the news and in reality that some people lose their lives to food allergies. So if we can reduce the chances by introducing foods in that window of tolerance so that food becomes friend rather than enemy, and there are many studies that are going to give us more data even in the next year, we are going to save lives.
You know, there's a lot of controversy, though, about soy and soy products. A lot of parents will give their children soy products rather than introducing them to dairy or milk.
Right.
But I know there's a big controversial study about soy and how it affects children and giving it to them when they are infants as well as young toddlers.
So let me break that down. When we have a high-risk family, so if your family's loaded with allergies, or if your child has even exhibited eczema, say if they're breastfeeding and haven't had solids yet, what these new guidelines say is that instead of giving soy formula as an alternative, we want to give what's called an extensively hydrolyzed formula, or a hydrolyzed formula like Alimentum or Nutramigen, to those children so that we can prevent cow's milk allergy down the line. So if you have a child with eczema or family loaded with allergies, a high-risk child, and you're not exclusively breastfeeding in those first 4 to 6 months, or if you're supplementing, you don't want to supplement with soy, you don't want to supplement with cow's milk, you want to supplement with a formula that has neither of those components in it. And research has shown, really good research, that that's going to help prevent milk allergy down the line in those children.
Well, you had talked about you just mentioned that we anticipate more changes down the road with more studies coming out. Is there anything that we are anticipating to discover in those?
We're hoping to further define that window of tolerance, especially for peanut protein. So there's an ongoing study in England being conducted by Dr. Gideon Lack. It's called the LEAP study. And what he's done over the last several years has taken hundreds of children who were high risk, who had eczema, who had families with lots of allergies, and he's introduced peanut protein into these babies very, very early. And this is a double-blind, placebo-controlled study, which means the parents don't know what their kids are getting, whether they're getting peanut protein or not. And when the study gets unblinded, when the box lid comes off and we see the true results, we hope to know what that window of tolerance is, because 7 years later, he's looking at who has developed food allergies to peanuts and who has not. So this will probably be one of many studies, probably many who are conducted with milk and with eggs and with other allergens, but with peanut specifically, we're going to start to be able to shape the definition of when those windows of tolerance open and when they close.
Well, I know this. Neither of my children are allergic to peanuts because I have made my share of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches without the crust for the rest of my life. It's just that simple. I'm good. Anybody else in there with me on that one?
Peanuts are a tremendous source of protein, and they've got so many micronutrients, and to be able to give them more freely to America's children is going to be a good thing. But for now, we have a lot of questions, but a lot of answers emerging.
We have some good answers.
If you would like more information, go to Dr. JJ. You can go to mdmoms.com.